boys and girls. It is day 6, so you should be starting this as your second week of working on this creative writing project. Just like in class, we generally take a couple weeks to work on one big writing project, so that's why we're taking our time on this one to make it the best it can be. So for day 6, you guys should have drafted on Friday or day 5 last week. Everybody's days are a little different, but day 5 of writing on last week, you should have had your draft finished up. So hopefully you have that in place. You definitely need your whole draft done before listening to this lesson. So if you're on this lesson and you don't have your draft done, you might want to pause it and finish up your draft and then come back to this lesson because this one is on revising and you can't revise unless you have a whole draft to revise. So what I'm going to talk about today is first I wanted to talk about what is on my screen here. This is a little organizer that I like to use. It's an acronym called ARMS, and it's what I use to help my students revise their writing, and especially narrative. This one's specifically made for narrative writing. So what we're going to do is A is add sentences and words to elaborate on your ideas. R is for removing unneeded or repetitive words and sentences. I tend to do that a lot, kind of repeat myself, so that's a big one for me. M is move words or sentences that belong in a different spot. And then S is substitute words with synonyms that fit well in the sentence. Today, I'm mostly going to be covering, or I'm only going to be covering the A and the R of ARMS. So we're going to add sentences and words to elaborate our ideas. That's a big one to use, like with adjectives, adding more dialogue, words that characters are saying. Those are examples that you might use. And then R is to remove. We're going to remove some of those unneeded or words that we repeat. Then on tomorrow or the day 7 lesson, you will go over moving words or sentences that belong in a different spot, and then substituting, last but not least, is substituting words with synonyms that fit well in the sentence. So that's actually only days 6 and 7. So fix that we're going to work on revising. So, just so you know, like I said before, if you haven't finished your draft from last week, you need to make sure you get that done first, get everything drafted, and then come back to the revising lessons. So, let's go ahead and get started. So, for A, adding sentences and words to elaborate on your ideas, and R, remove unneeded or repetitive words. I'm going to go into my draft here, which we are doing in Google Docs. Remember that that is where your teacher asks or wants you to do your draft as well. So I went ahead and on the last lesson, I believe that you only saw me type about half of it, but you didn't need to see me type the whole thing. So I went ahead and finished up typing this last night and worked on the rest of my story. This is just a short story. It's only about 3 pages. It's 18 font, which is huge, so that's why it takes up 3 pages. So I'm going to go ahead and just walk you through some of the adding words or phrases that I want to do, and also the R, which is removing repetitive words. All right, so the lunchtime disaster. Amber Marquette loved her job aboard the International Space Station, but some days, like today, were very tiring. So that's the first one I kind of come across. I decided I think I might actually. Oh, that's not the one. Sorry. Her work repairing an important computer in the science lab. That's the part that I want to work on. So her work repairing an important computer, and I don't have where she's repairing that important computer, because all over the International Space Station there are computers. So I want to be specific in where she's at, especially since this is the introduction. So she had just finished her work repairing an important computer in the science, and I'm going to capitalize that because it's a specific place, lab. I'm going to leave the other part. Lab had started at 5 a.m. this morning. So her work repairing an important computer in the science lab had started at 5 a.m. this morning. So that's a statement. So that's what we call adding detail right there. So I'm just going to highlight that so you guys can see everywhere that it's yellow is where I'm adding detail. It had started at 5 a.m. this morning. It was 2 p.m. It was presently. It was now is what I have there. So I'm going to wait on changing that around. So it was now 2 p.m. I'm going to decide if I. It was now 2 p.m. and she was making the final repairs necessary to bring the computer back online. One more turn. Got it, Amber murmured to herself as she secured the last part of the computer that she had taken apart. A sense of accomplishment came over her, but it was quickly followed by an intense wave of hunger, and she realized she hadn't eaten hadn't eaten her since her quick breakfast at 5 a.m. I'm gonna go back to this part over here. It says a sense of accomplishment came over her. Okay, but it was quickly followed by an intense wave of hunger. She hadn't eaten since her quick breakfast. As a reader, I'm kind of going, huh, I wonder what she ate for her quick breakfast. So just add a little more detail there to give your readers a good image. So I'm going to say her quick breakfast was something that would be a breakfast that would be packaged in space. Definitely probably a packaged, I'm going to say oatmeal. Okay. So this is another addition that I made. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight that for you so you can see where I added some detail. One of the things Amber looked forward to the most in her days were her lunch and space. And lunchtime allowed her to relax and really enjoy the fact that she, one of the small team astronauts orbiting Earth in this beautiful ISS. It was also the time of day where she got to enjoy her favorite space food, mac and cheese, brownies, and lemonade. All of this is prepared from a pouch, of course. And if you guys are thinking, Miss Smith, those squiggly lines are there, why aren't you fixing them? That's okay. I'm going to leave those for right now because that's called editing, and I'm leaving editing for the end. So I like to draft and revise. So revise is all about adding more detail, putting in better words. Editing is fixing those mistakes of like spelling or fragmented sentences. So I'm going to save that work for another time. Brownie time, Amber thought. She carefully headed from where she was working to Node 1, where her favorite meal awaited her. So, this is the part that I was thinking about while I was writing it last night. She carefully took the packages labeled mac and cheese, brownie, and lemonade from the food containers and then flew through. That's a really long sentence, is what I decided. So, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sentence, or part of the sentence from the food containers. I'm actually going to take that out. That's more of a movement, which is the M, but that's okay. And I'm going to go to once she arrived at the food container. So I'm going to set this sentence up at the beginning so that we know where she's at. So once she arrived at the food containers, that for a second. When she arrived at the food containers, I need a comma there. She carefully what do I have? She carefully took the packages labeled mac and cheese, brownie, and lemonade, then flew through the bright hall to the food room. So one of the reasons, there are two reasons why I took from the food containers out. If I left from the food containers there, it would be repeating itself, and I don't want to be repetitive. The other reason is it makes more sense to put it before the explanation of what she was taking, I guess, off the shelves, because then we know where she's at, where she's taking this food off the shelves. All right. So we're going to move to the next paragraph. Silence. The food room was empty this time of the day. Amber used the water dispenser to turn the lemonade from the powder into water. She took a huge, refreshing gulp, and next she opened up the pouch labeled mac and cheese. So I feel like, and then it goes into her talking about her, the problem. The thing I was thinking about while I was reading this is I'm keeping my setting that I drew in mind. And I was thinking about one of the things that I drew in there was the straps to strap her down. And she never strapped herself down to like when she sat down to eat her food. So I thought that would be important to put in here because we want to give our readers a full visual of what it would look like for an astronaut to be preparing their food. So I definitely think she would need to do this. So she belted herself into her chair and sighed deeply. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're adding things. When we are adding things, we're not just doing it to add things. I mean, really, I've only added 3 things so far. Some of you definitely will probably have more if you don't have 3 pages worth of a story like I do. But what's important is not just what I'm telling you, because it's not about the story that I wrote, it's about the things that I'm doing. So I'm finding places where I want to explain more. I want to you, the reader, to know like what exactly are you supposed to be visualizing in your head. If you can't in every paragraph answer the question who, what, when, where, why, you probably are missing something. So think about it that way as well. So, wait, what is this? Amber exclaimed. She looked down to discover spaghetti and meatballs in the silver food pouch. The food pouches were never labeled incorrectly. Something about this incident was very suspicious. So, Amber grabbed the food pouch off of the table and glided out of the food room. David, she thought, this has to be the work of David. She glided through the halls of the space station until she found herself entering the control room. Inside, David was writing in a log book. Hey, Amber, David exclaimed as he looked up from the logbook. How was your lunch? David was always pulling pranks on the other crew members, but he wasn't a very good liar. Amber laughed. The mac and cheese was a bit less cheesy than usual. Do you know anything about that? From the look in his eye, Amber knew he did something. If you don't mind, I'd like my actual mac and cheese, please. Hmm. Okay, he laughed. And I switched the tags on your macaroni and spaghetti. Did it surprise you? David couldn't hide his involvement. Yes, it was definitely a surprise. When I looked down and saw the spaghetti, I instantly knew it was you. She laughed again. Now you're going to come with me so that I can make sure I get the right lunch this time. So, Amber and David leisurely floated toward the food room, chatting about the stressful morning. Amber, the stressful morning Amber had before the macaroni incident. The least David could do was lend an ear after ruining Amber's lunch. When they stopped at the food station, David grabbed the 2 canisters and began switching the labels back to the right spot. So I thought that instead of David grabbed the 2 canisters, I put the canisters describe what 2 canisters. Even though most of the readers probably know that they're talking about the 2 canisters that she got switched up. What I wanted to clarify is what a canister is here. So a canister is holding the pouches of food. So it wouldn't just be the thing she's holding, it would be the whole canister. So this is why we want to be specific. Specific. Oh my gosh. So I'm going to go on to say David grabbed the canisters of mac and cheese and spaghetti. Spaghetti. Apparently, spelling spaghetti is really challenging for me. And began switching the labels back to the right spot. When he was done, he handed Amber a new pouch labeled macaroni and cheese. Looks like you're getting your dinner early tonight today. Amber handed David the open spaghetti package. They didn't waste food on the International Space Station. So let's see here. So this is also where I thought I thought I needed to add more detail. They didn't waste food on the International Space Station, but we need to be specific what that meant for this situation. So what does you're getting an early dinner and her handing David the package how does it connect to them not wasting the food? Well, hopefully you all know what that means is the open package of spaghetti would have to be consumed, and I'll come back to that squiggly line, like I said later, soon. I'm going to continue the important work of just revising. I'll come back to that incorrect word later. So that kind of gives a connection of like the fact that he's obviously going to have to eat this spaghetti. I guess I had this coming, David sighed, sat down, and began to eat his spaghetti and meatballs. I'm going to be starving when I wake up tomorrow morning. Amber giggled. David always somehow managed to punish himself with pranks. She opened her fresh food package and smiled as she saw it contained her favorite dish, mac and cheese. And that's the end of my story. If you take everything that I added, which I didn't keep adding the highlighted yellow here, so I want to make sure I do that here. If you take some time today, if you are a person who are, again, you're not done with your draft, I would continue working on that, obviously. If you wrote a pretty short story, that's okay. What you can do with the revision lessons that I'm doing today is go through and think about like how can you add more details, words, phrases? How can you replace some words that or take out words that you're repeating over and over again and add in details that have worth and actually make your writing better. So think about these two things today. Tomorrow we will touch on the MS part of revising. But I want you to just really take the time to read this out loud to yourself and continue working on your draft and revising and adding those details so that your story makes sense. I hope that this helps and continue to ask questions if you have them and make those stories nice and clear and stay creative. Thanks, guys.